You might find a tour of a few Mary Shelley sites in London, but I thought I'd take my own black taxi tour of 11 locations associated with the author of Frankenstein. Most of Regency-era London is now just a memory. But we'll explore the literary shadows and try to bring them back to life. Our first stop, Albemarle House, home of legendary John Murray Publishing. This elegant street once buzzed with the voices of poets and politicians. Here, Byron published Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, and though John Murray declined Frankenstein, he helped shape the literary stage that Mary Shelley was soon to disrupt. The publishing house was begun under John Murray Sr., but came to legendary status under his son, John Murray II, as the publisher of Lord Byron. The salon of the Albemarle House became the gathering place of London's literary greats, including William Godwin and those who would inhabit Mary Shelley's world. In 1814, 16-year-old Mary Godwin ran away with a 21-year-old poet, Percy Shelley. 2 years later, she would begin to write one of the most successful fantasy novels in history. Lord Byron and Mary's stepsister, Clairmont, had a brief sexual liaison. In a fateful chain of events, this would lead them all to Geneva 6 months later. Our next stop is the Drury Lane Theatre in the West End. Mary would only meet Byron once in London with Claire, but Frankenstein would not exist without him and the Drury Lane Theatre. The earlier Theatre Royal, Drury Lane, burned down in 1809. It reopened in 1812, when Lord Byron was named as one of its board directors. Mary's stepsister Claire, with an interest in theatre, approached Byron with a book she wrote she thought could be a play. Infatuated, she wanted his opinion. Today, you can take your own tour backstage. Byron, like a rock star of his time, was used to young female fans. He already had the reputation of being mad, bad, and dangerous to know from his affair with Lady Caroline Lamb. Mary had begun her first novel, Hate, during her 6 weeks elopement tour with Shelley. These are imagined covers. She didn't finish it or attempt to publish it. Claire also wrote a book, The Idiot, as a result of that journey together, intended as a satirical expression of the opinion of others, where she was the protagonist. Across the street, the Nell of Old Drury pub, named for a theater mistress of Charles II, whispers of encounters past, and might have been a convenient meeting place near the theater. Just north in Bloomsbury is Marchmont Street, where Mary and Percy Shelley lived in modest rooms. This was their second address after returning from Europe. Mary's father refused to allow Mary to come home or to be spoken to by the family since the elopement, and Shelley was married. Shelley had been away most of the time, chased by creditors, but they moved here after his grandfather died, and he finally began to have access to part of his inheritance. This is an imagined room. The original building is gone. It was here that Mary began working on her first published book, History of a 6 Weeks Tour, drawn from her journal of their elopement trip, published in 1817 by Thomas Hookham. Their first child died in this house, likely of infant crib death.
Monday, March 6, 1815. Find my baby dead. A miserable day.
We next head out Euston Road, past the British Library and St. Pancras Station. We'll come back to these later, past King's Cross, to Skinner Street. William Godwin and Mary's stepmother, Mary Jane Clairmont Godwin, had their publishing house, Mary Jane Godwin Juvenile Library, at 41 Skinner Street, now vanished. Google Maps will point you to the alley behind, but the number 37 gives us a ghost of its location. It was here that Mary first met Percy Shelley. The bookshop appears on a damaged title page of Godwin's Life of Lady Jane Grey. One etching of its interior gives a glimpse inside. Mary grew up surrounded by books and radical thinkers. The family lived in the rooms above. At Skinner Street were Mary's father, William Godwin, and her stepmother, Mary Jane Clairmont Godwin. This portrait, found at Chawton House, identified possibly as Mrs. Godwin and suggested as Mary Wollstonecraft, here side by side, but with comparison to a daughter Claire, you can draw your own conclusions. This image evokes a proud woman publisher, a book in her hand. It was her name on the publishing company. Aside from his philosophical works, Godwin wrote children's books under the name of Baldwin. They published some well-known juvenile titles, including The Swiss Family Robinson. Originally the Family Robinson Crusoe, the title was changed in the second edition. Published just before Mary eloped, you might note the form of the title and written as a fictional journal. Did this influence Mary's thinking for Frankenstein? The Godwin's close circle of friends included Charles Lamb, who Mary was fond of, and Samuel Taylor Coleridge. It was likely from Coleridge that Mary first heard of Luigi Galvani and his nephew Giovanni Aldini's experiments with electricity, attempting to bring an executed Newgate prisoner back to life in 1803. Also in the house was Mary's half-sister, Fanny Imlay. This image is unconfirmed. Long gone without a trace is the Regency-era book emporium located on Finsbury Square, the Temple of the Muses. Very much like a modern bookstore, offering a variety of wares, framed as a temple of reading. It was here that Frankenstein was first offered to the public. Published in a 3-volume set on New Year's Day, 1818. It was supposed to be published on December 30th, but the printing was late. The 3 volumes sold poorly, blamed on the late delivery and mix-up in advertising. The novel was officially republished on March 11, 1818, the day after the Shelleys left for Italy. The publisher was Lackington, Hughes, Harding, Mavor and Jones, the company begun by James Lackington. It was Leigh Hunt's wife who suggested the publisher, after Murray, Hookham, and Charles Ollier all turned it down. A short ride brings us to St. Pancras Gardens, curiously, just yards from the London City Morgue. Mary had originally been buried here, but with the construction of the railway and St. Pancras Station, completed in 1868, graves had to be moved. She is now in Bournemouth. It's here that you depart or arrive on the Eurostar train, which the Shelleys might take if they were going to Europe today. Entering from Camley Street brings us a short walk through the fallen leaves to the grave marker of Mary Wollstonecraft, erected by William Godwin. It's inscribed, Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin, author of A Vindication of the Rights of Women. It's become a bit of a shrine. A few steps away is St. Pancras Old Church. A church has been on this spot since medieval times. Leaving the taxi behind, these streets of Somerstown were a familiar path to Mary, but was mostly open countryside and fields then. A GPS map comes in handy to find Polygon Road. Here is where stood the Polygon, a residential apartment of a time. This historical image is from about 1850. It's the building on the left, where Mary Godwin was born on August 30th, 1797. Her mother died of postpartum sepsis and agonized 11 days later. William Godwin was devastated.
That day decided the fate of the object dearest to my heart that the universe contained.
The streets have changed, replaced by the modern jumble. Around the corner, you can find a plaque on the Oakshott Court apartments. The marker recalls Wollstonecraft, but omits Mary. Maybe Camden will get around to correcting this. Mary idolized her mother, who died giving her birth. These are her portraits over time. This last, by John Opie, was painted when she was pregnant with Mary, according to Mary herself. It's maybe fitting that the British Library now stands near the path where the Shelleys once trod. In the Sir John Ritblatt Gallery, you can find first editions and changing exhibits of literary treasures, sometimes even Frankenstein itself. It's free, and you don't need a library card. For extra credit, you can take a cab or the tube to Hyde Park, where the tranquil waters of the Serpentine hold a tragic story. A pleasant scene in the Regency, Percy Shelley's first wife, Harriet Westcott Shelley, was found drowned here. At the inquest, her identity was only as Harriet Smith, with no mention of her noble husband. The London Times on December 12, 1816, reported,
On Tuesday, a respectable female, far advanced in pregnancy, was taken out of the Serpentine River.
Thomas Hookham was the paper's publisher. Here is a suggested image, based on descriptions, and the image of her daughter Ianthe. At the inquest, it was suggested she was jilted by a lover, rumored to be a groomsman. There was much gossip and innuendo, hints of conspiracies of foul play, but the coroner only issued a simple statement.
Found dead in the Serpentine River.
She was 21. Nearby is the Princess Diana Memorial Walk and Fountain. Where she was found is not clear, but likely near Knightsbridge. Her official address was in Brompton, a mile away, but she had disappeared for 6 weeks. The houses have changed in Hans Place, mostly rebuilt in the Victorian age. There is no marker, but this square represents the last known neighborhood residence of Harriet Westcott Shelley. How she was living here is not known, when she likely walked away to the nearby Serpentine. If she'd lived a half a century later, she could have gone shopping at Harrods instead. But you can. It's at the corner of Hans and Brompton Road. Our last stop is Chester Square in Belgravia, a short walk from tragedy to Mary Shelley's later years. These are portraits of Mary through her life. This is where Mary lived from 1846 until her death in 1851. Widow, mother, and finally acclaimed author. Here she attended her husband's legacy and wrote more novels. Unlike her contemporary Jane Austen, she would know fame in her lifetime. Not as much from the publishing of her book, but from an unauthorized play that made Frankenstein a sensation. From here, we'll follow Mary's story to other locations you can still visit. Subscribe for more, or you can get my novel, Secret Memoirs of Mary Shelley, at Amazon.